Where to begin a theater history course always involves an arbitrary decision. Theater, as defined as a communal human expression, has probably existed since the dawn of humanity. But the story of the foundation of Western theater is essentially the story of the Greek city of Athens in the 5th and 4th centuries BC. It is a story dominated by 5 dramatists, 3 tragic, Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides.
Show us your hands.
If they're not red,
You sleep soundly in your bed. Show us your hands.
left,
Right. You live unhunted.
if
They're white.
And 2 comic, Aristophanes and Menander.
Εμένα! Δεν μου φτάνει ο πόνος μου, μωρέ! Όταν θα τρώω του λιπού, πού θα πηγαίνει ο κόπρος και πώς θα βγαίνει!
And by Aristotle, theater's first theorist and critic.
Aristotle said that tragedy is an imitation of an action that is whole and complete and is of a certain magnitude. He goes on to explain that the tragic hero, in this form of drama, experiences a catastrophe, from which the audience experiences what he referred to as catharsis.
It is the story of how theater as we know it started in the worship of the god Dionysus and grew into a civic festival celebrating both the gods and the city itself during the golden age of Athenian democracy.
It tears me apart. I can feel the tears welling. I can't bear the thought the world would see me as an immoral man.
A far more opportune time for these feelings would have been when you were about to embark on the crime of raping your father's wife.
Human beings enact the faults the gods burden them with.
The Athenian theater was not a business like ours today, but was financed by the Athenian state as part of a religious festival, the city Dionysia. Theater emerged from the same impulse as religion, an attempt to make sense of the universe, to find meaning in the mysteries surrounding men's lives. Gradually, plays were separated from the direct worship, but dramatic festivals maintained a close connection to the civic religion. Plays were presented only during these festivals, and a professional theater as we know it did not exist. 3 tragic poets were chosen each year to present their plays at the festival. Each one of the tragedians presented a group of 4 plays, 3 tragedies and a satyr play, on one morning of the festival. In the first half of the 5th century, the three tragedies often formed a connected trilogy telling a continuous story. One connected trilogy survives, the Oresteia of Aeschylus, which traces the story of the house of Atreus from Agamemnon's murder by his wife upon his return from Troy through the acquittal of his son Orestes, who killed his mother in revenge.
Agamemnon, Menelaus, battle-hungry, hair devourers. Host commanded by twin birds, soldiers who leave these shores. First fate will waste choice crops and herds, then make the inner city yours. The moment when the iron clicks between the jaws of Troy. May no sky curse, glower down on it, and no god grudge destroy.
The normal practice for tragedians in the second half of the 5th century was to write 3 unconnected plays which dealt with a common idea or theme. The surviving plays of both Sophocles and Euripides are examples of this development.
Your destiny lies in sin, to kill your father, and with your mother, to breed children from whom all will avert their eyes with this pounding in me. I fled Corinth, and in my desperation, arrived at that very spot on the crossroads where the said lady met his death. And there, I saw coming towards me a herald and a groom, leading the horses of a great chariot, in which sat a man much as you have described. They began to force me from the road, and the one pushing me aside was struck by me in fierce anger. The old man brought down on my head with his double-headed club, and I pulled him back more than double. I struck him to the ground, and I killed him. I killed them all.
In the Poetics, Aristotle called theater an imitation of an action. The Poetics is commonly understood by critical theorists to be one of the earliest, yet one of the most important pieces of cultural criticism, and has served as a model for playwrights for the past 2,500 years. Aristotle's definition of the elements constituting excellence in theater significantly influenced theater practitioners in subsequent periods, and makes the theater of the ancient Greeks the natural starting point for the study of Western theater history.
To honor their gods, the ancient Greeks created wonders that forced them to make extraordinary technological discoveries. One such breakthrough was a theater built to honor the god Dionysius. It was the greatest theater in the Western world, with the most advanced acoustic design. Hidden in the hills at Epidaurus, about 100 miles from Athens, the 14,000-seat theater has dazzled audiences for 2,500 years. It is a feat of engineering. 55 rows of stone seats built into the hillside, with such precision that the theater has perfect acoustics.
This theatre at Epidaurus is quite simply the most special theatrical space in the Western world. It's the largest of all the surviving ancient theatres. It's the most beautiful. This is somewhere where the spirit of the god of drama, Dionysus, still lives on.
Surprisingly, the reason for siting the theatre in this remote place has its origin in medicine. Next to the theatre was a vast healing centre, and to the ancient Greeks, theatre was medicine.
One way of trying to understand the link between the healing cult and this particularly exquisite theatre is that for the ancient Greeks, music, and Greek theatre is a fundamentally musical experience, was actually used in medical therapy. The great philosopher Aristotle actually writes about how people who are distressed and psychologically disturbed can come to a great resolution of that and to a much happier state of mind by listening to certain kinds of music and watching certain kinds of performance.
At the adjacent healing center, the god of medicine, Asclepios, and his magical snakes were said to work miracles. Medical cures and remedies were inscribed on stone tablets. Shrines were built to the cult of Asclepios, and the center developed into a wealthy healing sanctuary. People came from across the empire to cure every ailment and disability. In 360 BC, the money collected from patients was used to build a vast theater. The architect, Polykleitos, had already built a roundhouse at the sanctuary, but now set about a far grander circular design. He chose a bowl-shaped site facing west so the rising sun would light up the landscape behind the stage. He dug out the round performance space before creating the huge seating area known as the gazing space. Thousands of limestone blocks cut from local quarries formed the seats. His design was for 32 rows, although 23 more were added 2 centuries later. Behind the actors was the scaena, the origin of the word scene, a 2-story stage building which was painted as a backdrop for the play. The scaena also enabled early special effects. When a play required a god to descend from the heavens, an actor was flown in on a hoist. The masked performers often played to audiences of up to 14,000 without the benefit of microphones. Polykleitos was able to create perfect acoustics. Even a coin being dropped at the center of the performance circle can be heard clearly in the back rows. The design of the theater also enhances the sound of the human voice. The secret lies in how sounds are reflected by the stone itself, reducing the amount of distorting echo.
A sound is produced by somebody's mouth. It will hit a wall, that's a reflection. And what they've done in Epidavros, in order to create a large quantity of short reflections, is that they've broken up the surface. There is no surface which is flat. So when a sound hits a wall, it's diffused in many, many directions. It enhances the original sound by kind of stretching it a little bit longer than it already is.
And in the quest for perfection, the Greeks developed another technique to make the sound even clearer.
When somebody speaks in a theatre, you can hear resonances, and if you have an ear for it, you know which resonances are going to get in the way of the dialogue. So if you were to find something that can take those resonances out, then you're laughing. And that's exactly what they tried to do. They used a resonator, which they would tune to the frequencies that they wanted to take out and to the reflections they wanted to take out. And they would embed them in the wall.
2,500 years later, the theater is still entrancing audiences. The place that has inspired for millennia remains one of the world's finest theaters. The ancient Greeks produced some of the most astonishing buildings in history.
Ήταν κανένας εδώ! Πού κρύβεται τώρα! Προφέτεψε τάχα! Πού πήγε! Και ποιος τον πεπράτησε! Έσε τα μάτια πέτερα! Και ψάξτε τον παντού! Τόλμησε να πατήσει στο άλσο! Στο άθυλο των τρομερών! Των σεπτών θυγατέρων! Του τρέμουμε να πούμε το όνομά του! Που περνάμε και το στόμα ψιθυρίζει! Είναι ανίποτη!